All right. Well, we'll get started. People are watching online as well, and some people may be coming in late, but I know all your time is very important, so we'll get started right away. I'm Dave Summers with the Omaha Bar Association. Thanks so much for coming to our 7th annual end of the year CLE, presented by the Lawyer Referral Service. We have here today our chair of the Lawyer Referral Service Committee, Mark Jacobs. Mark runs the committee for the Lawyer Referral Service. Donna, that checked you in, she is the director of the service. Can I get a show of hands? How many people are part of the Lawyer Referral Service? There's a few. Right? And we can't hear. You can't hear anything? All right. I was just saying, we part of the Lawyer Referral Service. Yeah. And so, if you're interested in becoming a member of the service, please see Donna. She can get you set up. It's a great way to find potential clients to get work. So we appreciate you coming out today. We've flown in somebody from Ohio. We're not making any. We're not going to make any Ohio football jokes because the Huskers are not the team that they once were when it comes to Ohio State jokes. So we have here today Mark Homer from Get Noticed, Get Found, or GNGF as it's known. And we've been wanting to do this for a couple of years, and we're really excited that he's here today because he knows online marketing. He knows online data protection. He knows what you need to be doing in the online world. We all have our cell phones. We all are online all the time. Our clients, our potential clients, are online all the time, and we need to know what Mark's going to tell us about that. And as we're in our practice, we need to think more and more about the business of what we're doing. And so it's a pleasure that we can have somebody with his expertise here today. We're going to go for an hour. We're going to take a little break and we're going to come back. If you need anything from Don and myself, please just let us know. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thank you. And we've been talking for a while to get out here. So I think last year, or it was a year or so ago, we scheduled this and then realized that we were actually speaking at the State Bar event. So we changed it up, but also because we spoke here, at the State Bar event recently, I changed my whole slides to kind of revamp them so you get the new, latest, and greatest stuff. So I've updated things here. So real quick, show of hands, just to help me out here. How many people would consider themselves like a solo small law firm? Okay. How many work at like a medium, large law firm? 20 plus partners and more. Yep. Okay. How many not practicing but just here for the CLE credits? Yeah. See, always one or two. Probably a few online too, right? So today we're talking about really marketing, but of course we're going to say ethics, and I'll talk about a lot of ethics because there's a lot of good information in there. Nebraska actually follows the model rules pretty closely, so there's a lot of stuff there, but I got some comments and stuff in there as well. Quick background about me. I worked at a small technology company right out of college called IBM, and happened to be there just total luck of circumstance in terms of timing, but in like 94, 95, this small thing called the World Wide Web was created, and I got to build some of the first websites actually. So I think I built General Motors, Abbott Laboratories, a number of other kind of Fortune 500 companies. Now it's embarrassing if you go back to 1995 and look at a website. It was just all text and there was like flames and stuff. But it was, enough where I've been around basically online marketing, digital websites and stuff pretty much since the beginning. So I have been doing that for a while. In terms of legal, we've been working just in the legal industry at GNGF for, I guess, 9 years now. And we're invited to speak a lot of places and stuff, so you can find us. We write for like the ABA Journal, Attorney at Work, a lot of other conferences and stuff. So we've been in the legal industry for quite a while and just focus on like the marketing side. So just full transparency, no one at our firm is a lawyer. So we are marketers and technologists that work in the legal industry. We also wrote a book about 8 years ago called Online Law Practice Strategies. This is our 5th edition that we're out right now, and actually I'm due to update it next year. But Everybody who's here and online, I have a code and stuff for them as well. But there's a form here, so I'll get it out on the break because we didn't get them out ahead of time. But just fill out and we'll send you a free copy of our book for attending CLE. It was part of our agreement coming out here. And that is, I'll put the code up next for the people online. So something unique about me is I've survived a plane crash. Anybody else survived a plane crash? I'm always the always one. Actually, that's not true. One other person in all my years of speaking was in a plane crash as well. Now, the irony is not lost on me because this is what I was trying to do when the plane crashed. Right? So, I was trying to go skydiving. So next time, you have some friend have this crazy idea to go skydiving, and you say, "Why would you jump out of a perfectly good plane?" Now you know they're not all perfectly good, right? So, thank you for laughing at that. Okay, so if you're online, gnGF.com/free-book, and I peppered that throughout the slides just so people can grab that as well. I'm not used to a cord, and I'm going to probably trip at some point here. So what we're going to cover today, and I've got a lot of slides here, so I'm going to move fast on some things, but we'll have time for questions after the second set of, like when we go to the data security stuff, because that one's a little shorter. But we're going to cover essentially what I call the top myths about online marketing, and how to kind of like break through them, because we talk to lawyers all the time who are trying to understand how do I grow my law firm, and how do I worry about this online thing, and everybody's being told or reading things that maybe are outdated or just wrong. So we're going to kind of cover a lot of the things that we are hearing constantly that just are flat out wrong. So we're going to talk about that today. Then we'll go into a lot of the ethics things to be concerned of, and I'll be pretty frank. I mean, when it comes to marketing ethics, the majority of the time, from what I found, the bar associations aren't out there searching websites looking for problems. What happens is if you start doing a good job, some competitor typically goes, well, let me see what I can find and report them, right? And we've had clients where we've had to like fight things for that reason. So, but we will talk about the ethics. And then I'm going to kind of finish it with kind of like a simple online marketing checklist. So if you're kind of doing this on your own or have a team, we'll kind of go through, here's how I would approach things, and here's how we approach things actually. So that's, so we're going to start with the myths, right? So we've got, first myth is that online marketing is just your website, okay? So people always say, no, I'm good, I have a website. I don't need to do any marketing, I have my website, right? So that's the myth we hear all the time. And I get it, like in 2005, this was the height of a website, right? This is Jones Day. I mean, it's not the sexiest website. That's their homepage from 2005. But that's all you needed, right? And do you remember actually going to your browser and typing in www.something.com and hitting enter and waiting for it to come up, right? That was how we went to websites before. When's the last time somebody actually typed in www.a-website name, right? If you want to go to Target, do you go www.target.com? No, you just type Target and it gives you 18 different ways to link to Target. So now we're in 2019, and online equals your website presence. Okay, so this is what I want to make sure everybody realizes. Like, it's not just about your website. Your website's in the center. It's still important. To be honest, I'll show you some in a second. It may not be the most important thing anymore, but it's still very important. And around it, though, you have all these ways people can find you. Right? They have Facebook pages. They have Avo and super lawyers. You've got Yelp there, which we all hate. I'll be honest. We all hate Yelp. Okay, so even as marketers, we hate Yelp. But they're there and they rank and they show up, right? So people can find you these ways. Google My Business, we're going to spend a little time on that later. But here's why I want to show how online presence is more important, right? So I'm going to show you a mobile search because maybe a surprise to a lot of people. Mobile phones drive over 50% of traffic to websites. Okay, I think it's like 60-some% of general population. Across all the law firm websites we manage, it's over 50%. We have a couple that are like in the 40s. We have some that are in the 60s. But on average, we're over 50%. So most of your traffic is coming from mobile phones. So you have to be aware and be thinking about what I do about traffic from mobile phones. So if I type in here like immigration lawyer near me, I don't even know where I was at when I took this screenshot. San Diego maybe. So if I'm typing immigration lawyer near me, you see I've got one page there, 2 pages there, 3 pages there where I haven't even got to it. There's no website there. There's no law firm website. You've got, let's see, do I have a little laser pointer? I do. So you've got, your ad, there's some ads. They don't look like ads, but they're ads. You've got an ad here for Avo. You've got an ad here for somebody. Another ad. Then there's these, the Google My Business, which you guys maybe have heard about. We were going to talk about that today, because if you haven't heard about it, you need to be doing that before you do anything else. You got Google My Business, directory listings. We've got a Yelp search. We've got an expertise.com directory listing. I haven't even heard of that one. Then we've got super lawyers. And we got, oh, there's the Avo. Google's even showing some images of lawyers that are immigration lawyers in San Diego. Like, why do I care? But I mean, they're showing, and oh, look, that's above the first website. Right? So I basically had to scroll 3-4 times before I got to an actual website. But if I'm a user, I don't know I'm looking for a website. I just know I'm looking for an immigration lawyer near me. So I may click on an ad. I may click on, oh, here's the top 10 best immigration lawyers. Maybe I'll click on that. Right? So like the consumer to, legal services consumer isn't thinking I need to go to a person's website. They're just looking for an answer to the question they asked Google, which was an immigration lawyer near me. So we have to be thinking, web presence. On desktop, it's not that different. So this is a desktop search. So, if you look, I'm kind of scrolling a little bit there. But you got ads at the top. You have your Google My Business. You got directories. There's a website right there, Cordell and Cordell, and then more directories. So there's one website on this search return. Right, so just thinking about your website is going to kind of like miss a lot of opportunities. So we just talked about lawyer referral service and stuff, right? So referrals are awesome and still drive a significant amount of business. But it's not a growth strategy if you're, and I'm going to show you why. So, we get a lot of people say, well, I have great referrals, I don't need marketing, okay? So Clio, has anybody heard of Clio practice management software? Okay, so they do a really cool thing. They do a legal trends report here, and it's been getting better and better. So this year they incorporated some things about how you're finding a law firm, right? When you need a lawyer, how are you going about finding it? And so they asked, right? I don't know if somebody know I got a DUI, right? So they're going online. Google has all the answers, right? So is it reverbing? Cool. So they're searching on their own. So you've got half and half, right? But I just had we do a Facebook Live kind of show every other week, and I had Marshall Lichty, the author of a Small Firm Roadmap with Lawyerist, and he basically said, in his opinion, and from the research and stuff they've seen, we're at like peak referral. Okay, the demographics right now in terms of like the amount of people that rely on referrals, okay, we're like the demographics are aging out. And here's the data. So from the legal trends report, the younger generations are less likely to value referrals from lawyers or to lawyers. So people that rely on referrals, 60% of boomers rely on referrals. 47% and 46% of millennials, right? So in that 50-50, right, the generation that's coming up, and by the way, how many people are always like, oh, those millennials, we talk about them like they're 17 years old, right? So millennials are turning 39 next year, right? That's some serious earning power, right? Those are good clients. Someone in their 30s, it's a good client. And by the way, they're the largest group in the workforce. Right, so they're not this pesky kids like the Scooby-Doo gang or something. So this is why referrals are becoming less important. On top of that, though, because I'm still a big believer that it's 50-50 right now in the data. So even if they become less important, it's still driving a lot of business. So don't ignore it. But referrals are going online. So this is a study we commissioned. It's in our book. So we had asked some similar type of questions. And we said, hey, when do you visit a website? When do you go learn about, a law firm online? And majority of the people say, I visit a website before I go talk to the lawyer, right? And now we know, like, if I was asking this question again, a couple years later, I would talk more about web presence and reviews and stuff like that. But that's essentially what's happening, right? People are going online. So, we always say essentially like, you don't want to lose the referrals that you didn't even know you had. Right? People aren't, do you guys remember the day, like I remember the days of having like a folder of business cards. If somebody like said, oh, you know an accountant? I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. I have an accountant, here's a business card of somebody. That was a thing we did back in the day anymore, right? We have our phone in our pocket and we give somebody a name, they pull out their phone, they type the name in, then what comes up is whatever Google knows about that name, right? They don't, we always talk about it in the book as, we trust strangers now. So when it comes to reviews, and I could go in, I don't go into reviews as much in this presentation. I mean, I could do an hour on just reviews, things like that. So we are basically trusting strangers. Even your referrals are getting lost if you don't have a good web presence when they type your name in. Okay, and I think for like larger law firms that rely on like the Rainmaker and the networking and going out and doing a lot of that work where you're, going to the events and the charity events and things and shaking hands and networking, like that is becoming that much more important, right? Because then they go back home, they kind of remember your name and they type it online. What does it say? Right? So I think the reputation management, brand management, that kind of, like all different words people use, that's really important, I think, across the board. So the other thing we hear, and this one drives me crazy, but search engine optimization is not important anymore. Another thing we'll hear is like, SEO is dead. And there's always an article every year that comes out around January. I'm sure we'll see a bunch more, here, just look for them. But it says, SEO is dead, here's why. And some of the reasons people say that is because, like, if I was to, type the attorney near me, the first half of that was ads, okay? So this is, when we talk about ads versus SEO, there's two different things. I want to just be clear on this. So when you have a search return, this is on desktop, but it's pretty similar on mobile as well. That area in white is like paid ads. I mean, so the little tiny, it's hard to see because Google's making it really hard to figure out the difference these days because they have to make their $7 billion a quarter on these little things, okay? So these ads are at the top of the search, and that's paid, right? So that's paid advertising. It's called PPC, pay-per-click, paid ads, SEM, search engine marketing. There's a whole bunch of words you'll hear people use and agencies will use, but that's the paid stuff, okay? Then we've got this side of things, which is whether it's these directory listings here and this stuff here, that is organic search, okay? That is listings that Google has decided to show people based on some ranking. All kinds of stuff we can get into algorithms and stuff if you want to like really nerd out, but that's your search engine optimization work, helps you get there. Paid dollars to Google helps you get to the top of the ads, okay? So paid dollars to Google doesn't affect your organic SEO, despite what you read, it does not. If somebody ever says that, don't believe them. I'll tell you right now, being an expert and having Google friends and stuff, like those are totally separate. But here's why we hear SEO is dying and search engines, optimization. Don't worry about it. I just have to keep paying more and more ads. This is very recent data. This came out in July from JumpShot. But this is what they do is they have their on a bunch of browsers around the world, basically, and a lot of like Chrome and Android and stuff. So it kind of maybe gets it's skewing a little lighter on iPhone. But what they do is they track data when somebody does a search. What is the next thing they click on? Do they click on an ad? Do they click on an organic search? Or do they think they got their result and just leave, right? So for example, the top thing there says, the black line is called zero-click search, okay? Zero-click search means I went to the Google, I typed something in, I got my answer, and I left. Good example of this, what was the Nebraska score last night, or last week? Right? Maybe I shouldn't ask that. How the Buckeyes do? Yeah. But so like I will type in, did the Reds win last night, right? And Google doesn't make me go to ESPN anymore. It just shows me the box score right at the top. What's the weather tomorrow? It just shows me, right? I got my answer and I left. Okay. So it's doing that more and more, and it's actually grabbing snippets of information. So there's probably some examples. Like legal, where it'll say like, what's a good DUI attorney near me? And they'll actually grab a snippet and put it at the top. And I don't even know how Google's not determining. They're just finding some rank that drop it up there from a Yelp listing or something. But well, here's the attorney. It's just horrible. But those exist in the wild. We've seen those. But if you see the organic, less and less people on mobile are clicking on organic. We're down from 40-something% on the left, it's hard to see there, down to 26%, but ads, which is the red line, is going up from 3 to like almost 12%, okay? This is what people are doing when they get to a search result. So we're seeing ads increase and organic listings go down, and that's on mobile. And if you remember the mobile slide I showed you earlier, I mean, we swiped like twice to get through the ads, right? That's why I think why ads are going up. On desktop, it's not as bleak. Search is going down, or the organic search is going down a little bit. Ads are going up a little bit, but desktop's not as bad. But know that everything's trending mobile, so you got to care. So people see data like this and go, oh no, you know, like SEO doesn't matter anymore. I need to invest in paid. And paid advertising is not a bad strategy. But when we look at the other side of things, so that's like if people go to the browser, what do they do next? But what I like to do is say, well, let's look at all the websites that we manage, and let's look at websites across other industries and stuff. And BrightEdge does that data for us. And this is what is the traffic coming from? And what they show is that over 50% of traffic coming to websites is still that organic search traffic. It was something that came from a click that wasn't from an ad, wasn't from a social media post, wasn't from like an email you sent out, which would kind of fall in your direct and other. Like all the stuff about social media, people are like, oh, social media is, you got to be on social media, you got to do all this social media work, which again, not a bad strategy, just not the first strategy you should focus on, right? It's only 5% of traffic across all websites. And this is data across like, Fortune 500 companies, which you hear, you assume social media would be a lot more than that. It's still organic search driving. And in terms of like a legal case study, this is an example of a client. All we did with this client starting in, it was right around May, June, is we just focused on organic SEO work and, basically had a 4x of traffic over the course of a year or so. So like SEO still works. We know it works. We do it all the time. So if you hear somebody kind of say, oh, don't worry about SEO, just do this paid advertisement stuff, which by the way is a lot easier to scale as an agency. So, I'm all for it, but SEO is hard work, but it does drive a lot of your traffic. So it's something you should be considering. And again, SEO means search engine optimization. I say that because I did an entire hour-and-a-half presentation once, and the first question I got at the end was, what is SEO? So, all right, you just need to post new blog content every month. So when people say, okay, SEO, what is SEO? Well, you just need to post some blogs. And I know how many people here have ever like bought a package where it's like, oh, just, we'll post 4 to 8 blogs for you every month, or, we're going to just, write the stuff and send it to you and you just put it online, or we send you these blogs that we're sending, 10 other people, and you just grab those and put them up there. It's something that, again, it's something that scales really well if you're like a big agency, right? I can write content once and just give it out to a ton of law firms and just fire it up there. But what we're finding is that the reason people are blogging is because they think they should blog for search engine optimization reasons, right? They're not blogging because they actually care about blogging, right? So we end up with things like this, right? So we got this Georgia injury attorney, their first, if you go to their blog, the post that's current is from 2011, right? And a consumer who wants to bounce around your site and check you out before they call you is kind of going, are you even open, right? 2011 is the last time you wrote something. Or you get people who, I see these blog kind of posts all the time, they grab information from like traffic accidents, especially if they're going after injury accident kind of work. They grab these traffic accident posts and they kind of create a post about it on their website, thinking that, well, I'm going to get some of the benefit of that. Well, first of all, Bay 9 News probably got all the benefit of this from an organic search perspective. But again, if somebody was in an accident and they come to your website, do you really want to kind of rub in their face and look at all these accidents that happen? You're not special, whatever, just, we just talk about accidents. No, I mean, you want to show like, I care, we know this, we're an expert at this, we have empathy. So to me, like having these kind of things, or you get people who are like DUI attorneys that post all about all the celebrity DUI things that happen. Again, kind of like if I'm in a DUI, I don't want to see you kind of making fun of celebrities who got DUIs. I got a DUI, right? So like this, it's just a horrible brand for your law firm. So what we basically say is all these blogs that are out there just for search engine optimization reasons are essentially like, single-use plastic, right? I mean, it's just like littering the internet with just junk that's not good for your firm. So, and by the way, we used to In the book, we talk about, ways to blog, what you should blog about. But we've even come further away from maybe that chapter in there where we used to blog because, we were trying to do it for search engine reasons. And I kept, challenging my team, there's got to be better content out there. There's got to be better things we can put on a website that makes this firm look better. It isn't just for like the search engines, right? So we worked on that. So there are some like great blogs out there. I'm not saying blogging's bad, but you should be blogging for the right reasons. All right, so you've got, you want, if you're passionate about a topic, you want to debate it, you want to lead the conversation, write a blog about it. You want to be a thought leader on something. You want to be known as the expert. If you really want to drive your business from referrals from other attorneys, blogging's a great way to go, right? But these are the people who are also probably on Twitter, engaging and discussing and debating these things, right? So here's somebody in Cincinnati who writes a blog about like new media and how it's affecting this. I mean, this post actually happened to be about copyright issues with tattoos that NBA players were putting on of like their team, and then the NBA was like kind of like questioning like the copyright because that's actually the NBA's copyright. They can't put that tattoo on, which seems kind of crazy to me. But it was a really cool article. But again, he's out there pushing stuff. Or this was one from a long time ago that still obviously hit a good trend now. But the Canon Law Blog was all about the cannabis business community, and like again, they're informing and educating and writing, and like the writing of this is it's a bunch of lawyers that create a separate blog from their law firm and write about this, and it's like written really well. There's some humor in there. They're very opinionated about things, but it's great. But they're writing for the reason of being out there and writing about it, not just for search engine reasons. So, if I don't have blogs for SEO reasons, like what do we do? So what I always challenge you is think about, why do people search? Why do people go to Google, right? They go to Google to ask questions. They go to Google to figure something out or learn something, right? So I always say, think like Wikipedia. When you do searches in Google, I bet 8 out of 10 times Wikipedia comes up as the first answer for something you're searching on constantly, right? How do I, what happens when, does this? When you type those kind of things in, like Wikipedia is always showing up. It's because they're answering questions really well. So, of course, cats on the internet. It's common search, right? So where's the Supreme Court of the United States? So we've got two things. One, there's the zero-click answer right there, right? We talked about the zero-click answers. First thing is Google just says, well, here you go. Here's the address. I'm not going to make you go to the Supreme Court's website and figure it out. But right below it, there's Wikipedia. Because Google's like, well, if people are interested in the Supreme Court, they're going to have all the information. So what we have come up with is a term, and this is actually not in our book. This is something over the years we've coined. And we call it hot content, just to try to come up with something to remember. And it's helpful, original, and topical. So if you can write content, if you can take a look at your website and write content that is helpful, again, that's what people are going to Google for, right? Original, so it's yours, it's not on like 8 other websites, right? And topical, so make sure you know like kind of what bucket and what you're putting it in and why. So this is an example of a estate planning attorney who put a bunch of worksheets up there. So very helpful, right? So people can download it and they can go through some information, and then on those worksheets and other areas they talk about, fill this information out, and then when you come in, we will be ahead of the game and things will be faster and easier and process will be better, right? Checklists and these things are great because, by the way, what's great about that is it also saves your time, right? You're running a business law practice, right? So if somebody comes in and you have to basically ask all these questions anyway, have them get that information ahead of time so you don't meet with them and basically send them home to go do all the work they could have already came with, right? And they just put it on their website and turn it into content that Google could see and rank and search, and people can download it. They grab people's emails when they do it, so then they can follow up with them if they didn't call them. Simple. Here was like a calculator that somebody said, well, we wanted to do a standard. They saw a calculator on another website, for DUI, like how many beers did you have, kind of thing. They're like, but we want to do something different, and we're like, well, okay. So we came up with something where. I think this was Ryan Geist. So I guess actually. So this is a client of ours in Cincinnati, and we looked at all the microbrews in Cincinnati and had a drop down of the actual beers with their stuff, and it took a little more effort on our part, but now then they reached out and to all the breweries and stuff and said, hey, we had this little thing, and they could put a little table 10 about it and stuff on them. So it's kind of neat. Again, very original. Here's something I always recommend, like if you are, especially in criminal, if you practice in an area where like people typically get some, obtuse code that says what their problem was, they typically go to the internet to look for that. Now, if you've ever tried to actually navigate the state's explanations of what those things mean, or the city or the county ordinances, right? They're a mess. So why don't you just kind of take that information, write your own more English version of it that's helpful for the person to understand. When you get this, here's what happens, and here's what you need to worry about. And oh, by the way, here's why you might want an attorney, right? But because we did this, we outranked the state on this information for this law firm. Another one, frequently asked questions. This is actually where I usually tell people to start. So frequently asked questions is super topical, very helpful, and you do it already, right? You are writing frequently asked questions every day on the phone, right? You pick up the phone, you talk to somebody for the first time, especially if you're, like they're not even a client yet, maybe a potential new client, right? You're talking on the phone, they're asking you 2, 3, 4 questions. You're answering it, and then because of the answer, they're asking another question, right? So you could just record that information, take it, kind of generalize it, write down your questions, and then have somebody ask you that again, answer it, record it, transcribe it. You got the start of content. Really easy. So we'll typically go through and, we know what a lot of the common questions are from some search stuff we can do, but we'll create the questions, record the attorney answering them on the, on the phone, just hit record. We transcribe it, and then we can take that content in their voice, the way they answer it, and put it on online form, right? So frequently asked questions rank really well, and usually frequently asked questions are ranking when there's no ads. Because when you're doing paid advertisement, it's harder to know like these long 4, 5, 7, 8 word search phrases. You add voice search in the mix where people are picking up their phone now. Like my 17-year-old doesn't use his thumbs on his phone. Like when he's searching, he just talks into it. Like it's, so for me, it's like, did the Reds win yesterday? For him, it's did the Reds win yesterday? Talks right into his phone. So like and we're seeing these voice searches, we're seeing some of the craziest garbage come through as a term, as a search phrase, but Google's figuring out the intent of that is really they're looking for a lawyer who's like a criminal lawyer, who's this, and they're showing, like, and our client got the click, so like that garbled stuff ended up the right place. So these voice searches we're seeing even more. So voice searches is great for, having frequently asked question work. So it'll really help that trend that's happening. So frequently asked questions, so easy. You can, again, topic, right? So if I'm pulled over, what's a DUI offense? And, you could think about your area, all the different kind of ways you're helping Google bucket it as well. And say, oh, well, here's this topic. This law firm has these questions for that. Great content. And then video. If you want to take it up a notch, you could do the frequently asked questions on video. Record like 20, 40, 50 of those. Again, transcribe it, description underneath, take that, create some like frequently asked question pages that has the video and the content, because like how many times do you see a video and you're not in the right place to watch the video, but if you can scroll down and they have the transcript, you end up reading it, right? It happens all the time. So there's another way to do it. All right, so this is that kind of stop blogging, hot content. So this is an example of a client who had just like 2,000-3,000 pages on their website. Most of it was blogs that were junk. They had paid some service that was giving them like 8 to 10 blogs a month, and just automatically, they didn't even know what was being posted. I mean, talk about an ethics issue, right? I mean, like this company was just posting it online for them, and they were like 300 to 400, 500 words maybe, and it was just about useless topics, and we really pushed them and said, this doesn't represent you. We went through a branding exercise. This means nothing for that, right? So we basically pared down the content. If anything was good, we kind of combined it and made some longer pages of stuff that made sense. But for the most part, we kind of cut their content in half, restructured things, added some what we call kind of cornerstone content that's more like under that hot, more helpful and original content. And their traffic kind of, which was stagnating between like 500 to 700, basically doubled. So this whole idea of like content is king, you need more content. I'm here to tell you that it's the content is important, but it's the right content. and structuring it right. And like, so the volume and writing more is not what's needed. You know, like, you're going to be able to walk out of this internet marketing thing that we're doing right now, and I'm probably the first person ever to say you don't have to blog when you go home, right? So you can thank me later, but yeah, you know, like blogging is not the end all be all for like optimization. There's a lot better ways to do it. It doesn't take as much content. It's just the right kind of content. And this is a perfect case study of, you know, paring things down and doing things right and actually seeing a benefit for it. And the conversion rate actually went up because the content was the right content for the consumer visiting the website. So the other thing is, you know, we always talk about branding a lot in the book and in our calls about, you know, brand strategies and stuff like that. And I think this is maybe something from a couple of years. We're hearing people ask about branding more. You know, I'm seeing like obviously large law firms, right? You used to have like 8 names on the building, are now kind of coming down to like 1 branded name. Everything's changed. So we're seeing that from the top already, and we're seeing people, you know, like the small to mediums even coming to us and saying, hey, you know, I want to what the right target customer is for me. And so some of the marketing stuff is making its way in. I don't know if it's the practice management journals or whatever. They're doing it, you know, finally doing some good job. We're hearing this, but you know, we used to hear all the time that, well, my law firm brand doesn't matter. So again, this is kind of future proofing. So, you know, your brand is represented in what people say about you. That's one way to know about your brand, right? So online reviews are a great representation of what people are saying about you. 25% of boomers care about online reviews, right? How many people here are a boomer? Anybody? Boomers, right? So if you're a boomer, you're kind of going online, you see all these stars, like, you know, like my friend knows him, he recommended him, that's all that matters to me, right? But double the amount of millennials care about that. And that's, you know, the influence of like Yelp, and I mean, they're leaving their reviews, of course they care about their reviews. So, you know, reviews are one thing. And then the website. Again, 20% of boomers, 48, like more than double, right? Like we're only, you know, we skipped one generation there, that's tiny, that's my generation, Gen X, and nobody cares about us. But you know, like we skip one generation, we go from like boomers to like millennials, and it's like more than double care about the website, they care about reviews. And then they actually, this is from the CLE Legal Trends Report again, they actually asked about brand. I wish they would have asked more about brand and kind of went into like what that meant. So, you know, good thing to push them on for next year. But again, more than double. So exactly double in boomer to millennial, and more than double to like the next generation, which is like in their early 20s and down to maybe 18. Actually said the word, we care about the brand, right? They like these things are important. So, you know, what is a brand? It's just from entrepreneur.com, nothing like fancy here, but it's just essentially the perceptions, notions, and experience about your law firm. So it's not just about what you put online, but it's also, which is why I think online reviews are a good representation of your brand. It's how you interact all the way through, right? So we'll talk about brand here in a little bit. Also, in terms of like ways to go through your brand, and I'll get into, again, like in the second part on the checklist, we'll talk more about this, but I always say, like, you know, define your brand and platform. That should drive all your website design, your logo, but it should also drive your maybe social media content. But here's where I was talking about, like, it should drive how you actually interact, right? So once you understand this is who we are and what we mean, you know, from a culture and from a brand to our consumers, this is actually everything in the firm needs to work this particular way. This is our process for making sure that everybody feels the same way when they leave our, you know, care. And then obviously, yeah, it should be reflected in your online reviews. So the last one is basically, you know, people say, you know, like, well, I just want to outsource my marketing strategy to you. We get that all the time. Well, can you just figure this out for me? Right? You know, we're an agency. We do this stuff all the time for law firms. Like, you just, you know, figure it out. And I'm big on you can't outsource your marketing strategy. Okay? We can help, right? But you can't outsource it. And the reason is that your marketing strategy cannot live independent with your actual business goals. Right? So where do you want, you know, what is your goals for 2020? Right? Like, where do you want your firm to grow? You know, you're trying to grow revenue. Maybe it's like, you know, is it staff, profitability, right? There's different reasons that you have goals that then drive different strategies, right? So marketing strategies are going to be different for a bunch of those. Maybe you just want to spend more time on the life side of that work-life balance, right? We had one client who said, hey, this is great, but I want to get better cases, not more cases of this type, because I just volunteered to coach my basketball team, and so I can't do the volume I used to do. So, I understand it may hit me a little bit on revenue, but I want to get fewer cases that pay just a little more, so that was like our goal for that year. Not a bad goal, right? That's certainly a different marketing strategy. So that, it's very important that you can't, just kind of say, throw some money over the wall and have my marketing work, okay? So marketing in your business goals, you should be talking to your agency if you have an agency. You should be working, like monthly or, twice a month, team, talking about here's what our goals are, and here, how are we going to hit that from a strategy perspective. Keep an eye on the time here. All right, we're okay. All right, ethics. So one of the first ones I always tell people, because it's, most people forget about this one, so I'm just going to highlight it really fast and then we'll go into some other things. But typically most websites will have some kind of, contact us box at the bottom, like this is at the bottom, or you'll see it on the right side, or, you'll see some kind of way to, schedule a consultation or contact us today, and it's like, last, what's their case about, or what's your issue, right? In this comment box, we see people, before we used to put limits on this, we've seen like essays written in this little tiny box, like just on and on and on, like, well, my husband did this, this, and this, and this, and this, and then we're about this, and I want to do this way, and like basically telling more stuff that they talk about in there. Now imagine if you were already representing the husband, right? So there is, like social media is another one where people will kind of like give some help, but if they're not careful, right, they're kind of like there's because the relationship, what the ethics say, is in the perception, right, of the possible client, not the actual reality. I mean, now I understand there's evidentiary versus whatever, but from a just basic initial perception of attorney-client privilege, just be safe. Limit that to 500 characters or less. Like if you have a bond, go back, tell your webmaster, make sure that's 500 characters, because we see all the time that it's not. So I just want to call that one out because that's an easy win. Go back and do that tonight. All right, outsourcing or.
But you're saying don't remove it altogether.
Don't remove it. Definitely have it. You definitely want something, but 500 characters is usually like it's like not much longer than a tweet, right? A couple tweets. You're not going to get enough information. It's when they can like just tell you everything, right? It's usually enough that you can do a conflict check, but not so much that you're learning everything. Those boxes, like having on websites, having them on your homepage are huge. Like, and usually having it above the fold, people use those a lot. More people will call, or live chat. If you don't have live chat, that's another thing. I always tell people, if you get phone calls, you should have live chat. And live chat, there's services out there that it's just an intake form, but somebody feels like they're talking to somebody, so they'll stop looking on Google, and all they do is end up really scheduling you. They'll look at your calendar and schedule an appointment. We use a service to do it for us. I mean, so it's great. All right, outsourcing. So speaking of outsourcing stuff, right? CYA is basically, everybody here knows that when you hand off stuff, like I talked about the blogs earlier, right? When you hand stuff off for other people to do, it's your responsibility to make sure they're doing it right, per any ethics, professional rules of conduct codes, right? So I mean that's one of the first ones, right? So we're in what 5.3 on it in Nebraska, and it's right out of the model rules too. I mean this is pretty close to the ABA, which is some 30-something states, right? So so here it's like the partner or lawyer must take reasonable efforts to ensure that the company they retains actions are within the professional obligation. So and we'll talk some about that on the ethics of data security too. That'll come back. Don't mislead with your website. So we will see things like this all the time, like never lost a case, right? I see this on PI attorneys' websites all the time. Never lost a case. And what does that actually mean? Like being attorneys and being in the industry long enough, I know that means that you just settle everything. Like, yeah, you didn't lose a case because you settle everything, right? client blew a .21 and we got them off with no suspension, right? So I'll see that on like tweets all the time, like, awesome, look how awesome of a lawyer I am. The cop didn't show up, right? I mean, but like, we all know what it means. But that's the perception to the person. It's like, you are some expert because of this. Somebody in Pennsylvania just got in trouble because they had tweets like this, and they had some reviews that they had faked. So that was bad already. That implied a lot of expertise that the person hired them on, found out they weren't quite as good as they said they were, or they were kind of hiding the fact in social media, like the edges of the case, and basically sued them. And then they got brought up on ethics charges as well. So like, you got to watch this stuff. And it's easy to kind of like be on social media, right? And say, hey, look how awesome I am. I feel good, but watch that one. No testimonials on website without consent. So that's a big one in most states. You can have testimonials. And who else are we doing CLE credit with? Iowa? Yeah. So, both states can. So we're good there. So you can have testimonials, but just make sure you have consent, written consent on your website. You can have a lot of online reviews, though, which, by the way, are going to get read by more people, so I would focus there. And, you don't have to have consent because it's on a third-party website. We'll get to that one in a second. I can save your business or hire my firm. I mean, like, obviously, you guys know that these are just bad to say, but we see them. Our firm is the best in Omaha, right? We'll see stuff like that. And usually, we're seeing this stuff not because the lawyers are putting it on there, right? But they're hiring like a local agency that doesn't know legal, and like they would say that about the, I don't know, the dry cleaner, right? Best dry cleaner in Omaha, right? But you actually can't say that. So, like, they just don't do that. So you got to make sure you watch out. So technical stuff can get you too. So there's things in your website called title tags and meta descriptions, and some of the copy that's in the code, but it's visible in Google searches. So title tags are one of them and stuff, and just watch what people are doing, or just know that make sure you're finding somebody when you're asking, like if you are going to outsource this, just ask some questions like, do you understand how the ethics work and professional rules of conduct and what can and can't have, as lawyer advertising and websites and stuff like that, right? If somebody can answer that to some level of detail, okay, I can trust it. But a lot of people have no idea, especially like I said, like oftentimes it's like a local agency or somebody's, friend's nephew in their basement, with their website. If you have 10 pages in another language, this is another one I see. So people will have Spanish websites, but then they won't have a disclaimer in that language. So you need to actually have a full disclaimer in the language. If you have pages like that, if you just say, hablamos español, and that's it, right, by the phone number or something, you don't have actual pages in that, then you're okay. But there's websites out there, they'll focus on Hispanic audience, which is a great growth strategy, by the way. There's like that, for a search engine perspective, not a lot of people are doing that. So if you have full website copy and you have some people on staff that speak Spanish, and you do that, where you have your English copy is also translated into Spanish on a separate page, and you can do some extra ranking things for that, because people who are speaking Spanish are typing different words into Google than we're typing when we're speaking English, right? So that actually works well, but make sure you have a disclaimer. So there's that one. And then disclaimer is important, right? So make sure you have a disclaimer, whether you put it at the bottom or in Nebraska, and like most states, we're not Florida, we're not Texas, but yeah, so most states, you can just put a link to a disclaimer, have a deep disclaimer, and there's some great stuff that the ABA's put out about, top things you should probably have in your disclaimer. And I don't know if the Omaha bar or the Nebraska bar has anything on their website. That would be very helpful to kind of say, here's things you should think about having your disclaimer. And then the ethics and technology stuff we'll get into, there's probably things that you could start incorporating about if you are using some portals and stuff like that too. Blogging, if you are going to blog or write content that's going to talk about cases, don't talk about clients without their consent, and then watch the trial publicity. So if you're going to talk about it at all, be careful. This is where people get in something, they say, well, it was public record, so I'm safe, right? And it's actually just not true. So if you're giving information out, even if it's public record, Like that causes a lot of problems for ethics boards. That's out of anything. I think this one, from a marketing perspective, I see come up in most states where people kind of actually get reprimanded or sanctioned. And this one's funny too. The Hunter versus Virginia is an oldie but a goodie. But so he had talked about some stuff and on his blog about and he basically said, well, it's public record, and they went back and forth. And of course he decided to argue and fight it instead of just taking it. All they said, well, just take it down. He's like, okay, so he argued and fought it, like a good lawyer, right? But instead they said, well, let us go look at your website now that you're arguing and fighting with us. So they ended up finding a ton of other things that were wrong and sanctioned him on that. So yeah, you should watch it. We talked about watch who you hire. So this is actually a disciplinary matter from Indiana, where literally they said this law firm had hired a lead gen service. Lead gen service ended up doing things that a lawyer should or would never do, probably if they would have known what they were doing, to practically end the case, like really direct emails at the wrong time, all the things you shouldn't do, right? But they said, well, they got in trouble for it, and they said, well, we didn't know what they were doing. And Indiana came out and said, well, but you're supposed to, and they got in trouble for it, right? So this, again, we don't see it as often, but it's, it happens. Even if on mobile, here's another one. It's like, if it's on mobile, it's still a website. So, people will drop their disclaimer off there a lot. This is advertising. Make sure the font size is not too, you guys don't have to worry about that here. You don't have to say this is advertising in Nebraska. Very few states left on that one. Directories, we talk about directories all the time and how important those are. It literally says in the professional rules of conduct that you can put stuff in directories. So we always hear people say, well, can I put stuff out there? I mean, literally, you can, the word online directory listing is in the professional rules of conduct. It's in the model rules, so, you can hire people that do marketing for you, right? I mean, these things are in there. A lawyer can pay for advertising, so it's okay, right? Just know what you're doing and know who you're hiring. And then when it comes to reviews, don't say you can't get reviews, because if people like this leave reviews, right? Well, they also found 8 ounces of marijuana, and that the problem was because I got caught growing marijuana before, but I don't know where this 8 ounces came from. I think this is California, so probably totally cool now. I think he can actually grow his own probably now. But then he goes on to say, I hired this person because my friend referred him, and then I went and did this, and he give all this information. And this isn't like a fake one. This is a person who's left 14 reviews, photos up on Yelp. So this is like a real person. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's a fake review. Then I'll dive into it. So people are crazy. And then what happens when you get a bad review, right? Because you'll sometimes get bad reviews. Here's one. What was this one? Oh yeah, it's like, if I were a personal friend of hers, all the other people that posted reviews in the past week to respond to me, right? Because that's what we'll see all the time. Somebody gets a bad review and everybody gets all their friends to say, go write a good review really fast. And it becomes obvious what people are doing. So what not to do when leaving a review is what, this one, I think out of Illinois. So Betty responded to somebody's poor review by basically giving up details of the case that weren't even part of the review. Right? Responded with something that wasn't even part of the thing they were responding to, right? So she got slapped pretty hard. Actually, I think it was just a reprimand because once she fought through it. But then there's another one in Florida example. I have something almost identical where the person actually got sanctioned. Florida's much stricter on this stuff. So if anybody ever practices in Florida is going to snowbird, their rules are way harder. So basically my take is it's going to happen. You should reply, don't reply right away. But write a reply for the next person who's going to read it. You're not reacting to this person. You're saying, and you've probably seen this where somebody leaves a bad review on a hotel and the hotel replies, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That is not our standard of care. Typically we do this, this, and this. I'm sorry you heard that. Please give us a call. We're happy to try to make this right. Right? So they're not leaving that review to really make that person happy. I think they want to. Hopefully they do. But they definitely want the next person to read it and say, oh, that's not typical. Look how nice that they reached back out to that person. Right? And that's the kind of response you want to leave. And just, yeah, don't get specific. Don't ever get specific.
I'm sorry you feel that way? A non-apology apology?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to apologize, but you can empathize. Empathy's great.
Some way to get them to take something down.
So we've had people who leave something, and oftentimes, by the way, most bad reviews, if you go back and read, attorney bad reviews, are not about the standard of the quality of the work. It's almost never about that. It's almost never, they were a bad lawyer. It's usually miscommunication, didn't call me quick enough, didn't understand how the billing was going to work. I got charged, and then I found out that, I was going to get charged. That's almost always what it is. So usually you can call them up and handle the miscommunication stuff, and then people end up being happy, and either they can, in some services, pull it down. We've seen that happen. You just have to say, hey, now that we're clear, do you mind pulling that down? Obviously, that hurts my reputation, and obviously I did a great job for you. We just miscommunicated on this point, or be willing to if you really want to take something down, it might be worth giving them $500 back on that questionable fee that they thought was whatever, than to not lose tens and twenties of thousands of dollars because of a negative review, right? What would you pay to get that review taken down? And that might be worth sometimes with working with somebody to say, all right, we'll refund that for you, which is painful, I know, but it's worth thinking about. But yeah, we've had people reach back out and then have something taken down, or they take it down. The only way you can get the services to take it down, and Google and Yelp will, it's hard. Avo, especially since they've been sold, it just goes off into a void. But Yelp and Google, if you can prove that someone was not a client, you can sometimes work your way through that. Because sometimes you'll see someone on and be really mad because they lost, right? It's like in divorce, we'll see that a lot of times. People basically get in and get mad. This is one where this is going to sound crazy. Don't write your own online reviews, and that sounds obvious, right? You're like, why would you even put that on there? What happens is you get some attorneys that have all these really nice testimonies that people have written over the years. They're like, well, 85-year-old Joan doesn't know how to do it for her. Right, so that goes against not just standard, but goes against all the review websites as well. And so they could take down all kinds of stuff if they find that's going on. And don't pay for reviews. So don't. And this is something we see in general marketing advice for general business marketing, Entrepreneur or Duct Tape marketing, or all these different kind of general marketing sites. They'll say, well, just Bucks card if they leave a review, which against the review company guidelines, but from a lawyer perspective, you cannot do that. Right? You cannot give something of value for incentivize your staff to try to follow up and get reviews from people that they're working with, right? So if you have a legal that's very client-facing, saying, hey, for every review you get, we'll give you $50. If you can prove that it's a legitimate review from a client that make sure you have the standards in place to make sure they're not just making stuff up. But we've seen clients, when they implement some incentive things internal to the staff, go from 20 reviews to 100 reviews by the end of the year. Over 12 months. Don't get them all in 1 month, by the way. Do that over time. So we are running out of time, so let's get this one. Again, you're responsible for the reviews if you ask a review in some states. So this is not Nebraska, this is in Florida, and this one's in Ohio, but we're seeing some of the ethics, these are ethics opinions, not actual, written in the code. So there's no ethics right now, but I know Nebraska, when I read all the ethic opinions last night, they tended to always refer to other states for their opinions. So this is what's happening in other states. So Florida and Ohio are both saying, if you ask somebody for a review and they leave a review and it goes against the guidelines, you're kind of responsible. It's hard for them to figure that out, but again, it's usually when somebody complains. In Ohio, they say, if you are able to have that review taken down, it's like if you put it on your website or something, I guess. But you can get away with it. All right, checklist. We'll be way out of time on this. So protect your referrals is the first thing we talk about. So we talked about this issue. This is what it should look like when somebody searches for you. So if somebody searches your name, you should dominate that return. Okay. The thing you need to do when you leave here is if you haven't claimed your Google My Business profile for your law firm, number one thing you can do. It is probably the best, your number one website going forward. You still need a website, but this is a free website that Google gives you that basically on the side of here, shows you all the information somebody really needs about a website. There's reviews, there's information about what you practice, there's, you can post things now, right? There's Q&A. So the Google My Business profile is critical. It's probably the number one directory listing you can do. People will find it on mobile. It's used to generate other directory listings a lot of times. So if you haven't claimed it yet, do. If you have claimed it, go in and fill it out with photos. Think of it like your website. It's a second free website for you. And of course, because it's Google, they're going to show it more than other things, right? But here's one thing on that Q&A, on question and answer. Just be careful on Q&A because other people can answer, not just you. So if somebody asks a question of your business, another person can come in and answer that question, which seems weird, but they can. So we've seen things like this, be careful, you'll get robbed, find another lawyer, right? So monitor, if you have Google My Business, just monitor your questions and answers. And there's some tools out there I think you can pay for that will give you, a notification if there's ever a question. We got to run out. We got to pause on time on this. Then we'll jump into the other section. Right, we're out of time.
All right, we'll take 10 minutes. If we can get back sooner than that, then we get it done sooner than that. But we'll just take 10 minutes, maybe some cookies and water, fix your legs, just about to go along. Thanks.
And I'll try to finish up this and then jump into the next section in the next hour because it's less on that one. Feel free to grab a form if you want a free book.
Okay, so I just thanks for your information. We've gone in and claimed our website, didn't know. This was the one I was even asking about. So her office was easy. Blood-sucking attorneys who wasted every cent of my mother's money. This guy's name is Jay Smith. Not in our database. No way to know who the hell this guy is.
Yeah.
We don't know his mother. We didn't charge. You read his review, and we never charged it. There was no fees or something if you kind of read. And then, but you go look at the other reviews he's posted, and
they're all like that.
Blood-sucking doctor, wasted every whatever. But anyway,
he's one of those review trolls.
And that was why. My question kind of was:
so
is
because
there some way to just,
So the
And I like your point. If I can show he's not a client,
that is an angle to try. I'm not going to promise anything on that because you're going against Google.
I gave up on this months ago. Whenever we saw it, we said, "What do we do about it?"
The best thing you can do is get a lot more positive ones. Because what everybody assumes is there's always one. There's always that one crazy person. As long as you have a ton of other positive ones. Amazon did a study a long time ago that showed product sales for a 4.7 stars versus 5 stars. The 4.7 outsold.
Makes sense.
Right?
Makes sense because 5.0 is
It's 5.0 almost a suspect.
I'm circling back because I get a lot of these. I hire air conditioning repair, and then they call me up. Will you please go? And I go, I don't even know how to do it.
Yeah.
But interesting. Well, anyway, fascinating.
Yeah.
Enjoyed your presentation. Thanks a lot.
Great.
It's only 2/3 of my slides.
Yeah, it's always tough when you're
I'll just fly through it at the end here, and then we'll go into ethics. Are they going up online as 2 separate 1 hours?
No,
Okay.
they can get the full 2 hours. If they say they watch, they get the full 2 hours,
Okay.
even if they don't need the full 2 hours. So,
Okay.
yeah. I'm going to put it up on YouTube, and that'll be 2 separate ones, but for the Facebook, it's just one.
So if I go a little longer on this,
Yeah.
it's okay?
That's
Okay.
And I can always ask for more. If you will, I'd go ask for 15 minutes more.
I was wondering, so there are some firms in town, aggressive marketing, with testimonials. And so when it comes through social media or the firm's website as a testimonial, what do you see as the weight of that? And I'm sure it breaks by generation too, a little bit, but...
Yeah, testimonials on a website.
Yeah.
So basically what I call it is social proof. So we have another deck when I have like 2 or 3 hours on just marketing stuff. I'll go through with the website, here's the things you need to do, right? So one of the things we always say is social proof, but that's also, so testimonials are one of those. Another way is like the AV rated, AVO, super lawyer, whatever.
Right.
Like we all know that most of that's pay to play, but we know that.
Right.
The average person's like, oh wow.
The badges are still meaning something.
Means something. The testimonials, like what other people say about you, is good. Now, a testimonial website, I know you're going to be a little more selective than a testimonial on like Yelp or Google.
Right.
Right. You're not going to show me the bad ones.
But they're still taking some value out of it. It's not a. Well, it's
I even tell people
I
have people who will say if they're like Avo and Google, like we had one person who was like once he got over 100, he put over 100 Google reviews, for whatever 0.7 stars.
Right.
They put that on their website as like a content piece. They didn't like copy and paste it from Google, but just to say, you don't have to waste your time looking at Google. I'm going to show you how awesome we are. That's
pretty powerful. Yeah. Right. And because that takes unbiased.
And that was the idea. It's like let's So it works.
Yeah.
It works. It moves the needle.
Well,
so social proof's big. Like we get whenever and I push my team all the time because they'll redo websites and the client will want this and that, and I'm like, you push stuff down below the fold on social proof, and especially on mobile, right? You design mobile first, right? Like you at least have a badge kind of like hanging off here or here. And
most of the firms in town have updated their site in the last 3 years, and before that, it had been about 7 years. It was a slow transition, but now everyone. And then there's some firms that have actually changed in the last 3 years. They did the change, and then they did another change, and they keep on.
We just say every 2 to 3 years.
It's
just because stuff like voice search, right? Like now I'm going to like adjust the way I do title tags, and some content is different because searches are really long.
I moonlight to help my wife's firm. She's one of the divorce top level divorce attorneys in town, and we redid their site and their SEO and everything like that. And they're like, we don't need online reviews. We have Martindale Hubbell from back in the day. We have 45-star reviews, from all these lawyers, and so we're just going to go with that. And
but it never ranks.
There's no Google. There's no Google listings, and so they pulled the Martindale Hubbell, so it still shows like 45-star reviews until we get a Google one, and then it's going to go away. But
and you'll get the Google one without trying eventually.
Right. But they're like, oh, we don't want to like have our staff ask for reviews, and I'm looking around and everybody else has 50 to 100.
And you're behind now, right? Because before it was like I used to say you only need 12 to 15.
Right.
But now people have like you said, because they've been doing it for 3 or 4 years of getting 15 to 20. Now they've got 100. So, but we had a client who had somebody call and said, "Look, I called you because 100 people can't be wrong."
Right.
That was her comment straight to him. Was you showed up out of 3 people in the just probably searched for accident attorney or whatever, and like he was one of the 3 people, and the other 2 didn't have as many reviews, and here's another one with answering services and stuff. Like you could say 24/7.
Right.
And had people tell some of our clients, I called you because everybody else was closed. You're the only one open.
Let the message.
You call them, and you got the answering service who did an intake, and maybe even scheduled if they have access to like a Calendly or something like that. Maybe they even scheduled something, but they did the intake. They felt heard.
Right. What answering services do you recommend?
So we personally use Smith.ai.
Okay.
So Maddie Martin over there, she does a lot of speaking with them too. If you ever, she speaks on like kind of sales side of things, which is really good. Smith.ai is good, but I mean Abby Connect's great. I've heard, I know a lot of people like Abby, and I know some people like. I mean, I think it's more about setting the process with them.
You have
They've
to-
all been doing it for
yeah.
so long. If you just get in and say, well, you're just going to take over my stuff. It's like, no, like, here's the way we want you to answer. If somebody asks this, do this, that's, you know, because if they can give just a little more information than just, I can't say anything, but I can take your name and number.
Right.
Or when they actually say, like, I'm sorry, like, if you ever call a doctor,
Right.
like at 5:05, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, we're at answering service, we can't answer anything.
So frustrating.
Make them feel like they're your front staff.
Right. You need a storyboard a little bit more to get that.
Yeah, it doesn't take much effort because they will walk you through it, but a lot of people still want to take that time. But yeah, then you put 24/7.
I mean, people are getting home, you know, they're looking at the website at 9:30 at night, disconnect, then they don't call the next day, and they're back to the search, and they lost it.
Yep.
All right, well, let's see if we can get this back on.
I didn't hand these out earlier. Just want to grab one and pass them around. Okay, I think we're going to get started again. I'm going to try to go through a few more things on the checklist, and then we'll jump into the data security one. Data security, I just get to scare you about how bad hackers are, so this is more fun. All right, so this is, and I talked about protecting your referrals. It's getting the directory listings, making sure that when somebody searches your name or your firm name or other, you know, key staff that are client-facing, right, that you're dominating that return, right? You're showing up. Maybe you have a Facebook page, a Twitter page, all the different directory listings that shows up. So just working on that alone. So if you don't want to worry about search engine optimization, all this other stuff, you're still getting a lot of stuff from referrals, and maybe you're seeing your referrals dry up a little bit. It may be because people are referring you just when they go search your name, they don't like what they see. They think their friend's crazy or something because they can't find anything about you, right? So in the first 3 or 4 months of working with clients, that's all we do is we focus on the referral protection, the reputation management work. And this is typically we see, I think 25 to 30% of this one client had 51% increase in traffic, but way more increase in leads. Reason being, these are people that were looking for them. So on average, the new people that found them, that were already looking for that found their website, were more likely to call, right, or fill out a form or something like that. So just protecting referrals, like we usually say about 20-25% increase in traffic. This person happened to have 50, but if you are doing a lot of like networking kind of work out there, just doing the protect your referral stuff, which is I think the first third of our book talks about that stuff. And also this is stuff you can do on your own if you're like trying to save some money and don't need to hire a whole agency. You can do the protect referral stuff all on your own. It's great. Defining your law firm brand is the next thing. And so this is an example of somebody who really thought through who they really wanted to work with, right? Like we went through a branding exercise, like who, what is your favorite client? What's your, what was the best cases you've worked on? What were the worst ones, and he kind of came around to one of the things he really liked doing. He was a divorce attorney, and he liked working with women that were like professional executives that he felt often got, because they made a lot of money and often made as much, if not more than their spouse, kind of got the shaft in front of judges a lot. And so he said that was something that he was passionate about and trying to work on. So so because of that, we focused more women imagery, a lot of content on the website talked about that. And this is a guy who basically he moved his practice from Colorado to South Carolina, which you can imagine how hard it is to set up a brand new practice somewhere as a solo. Moved his practice across, and now is I think it's kind of owns that Charleston market in divorce. But he's got he ends up with more divorce cases, but he is the person if you are a female executive or female that's making decent money and going through a divorce. Like he's the person who gets referred to all the time. He's now got 4 or 5 attorneys working for him, and he's grown and everything. But started off by just really identifying his brand and be able to go all in on that. So the website just said this is exactly who we are. This is who we like to work with. And he was able to talk about from an empathy perspective. I understand this is what you're going through because we've experienced this, this, and this with other people. That's understanding your brand. Next thing is you got to develop your baselines. You cannot think about what marketing strategies and tactics you want to implement before you know what you're currently doing and what that's doing to your business, okay? So it's hard for us as an agency or any agency, right, to come in and say, all right, did we do a good job? Where you're like, that's usually people say, look, I don't know, I don't think really, I don't think you're doing a good job. If we know things like, like this is a client we had that has like spreadsheets of information they track, like how many possible new clients and what their, the different between their PI and their workers' comp, their calls, their NPS scores, their has. They track all this stuff, and so we're able to kind of say, okay, with that data, we can identify one area to say we want to use marketing strategy to increase this area and see how that moves the needle, right? So if you don't have baselines, it's hard to know where you're going. I mean, internally, this is, this is we use Salesforce things. So I think that's very important that a lot of law firms just, it's like, I did marketing, it's very hopeful. And then they're like, well, it's not really working, but nobody really knows what it was to know where it's going. And then once you have your baselines, look at that and say, what are your goals? We talked about marketing strategy, you can't do anything without business strategy. So based on current metrics, go back to some of those questions I asked before. Based on these metrics, your current baselines, how much web traffic are you getting? How many leads are you getting? What is your average profit per case? Not even marketing problems, right? You may realize that, well, I don't need to spend anything in marketing. I just need to shore up my business processes, right? If we can just get through a case a little bit faster and with 5 less hours, we'd be 20% more profitable, right? Like knowing these numbers is really important. Tactics, right? So and the difference of that is marketing strategy is things like this. I want to improve brand awareness in town to increase referrals. I want to gain more non-referral clients. I want to improve the dollar value of new clients. Increase conversion on my website, right? That's like a strategy. The problem is a lot of people talk at this level. This is the last thing you should be thinking about, right? In fact, maybe where you kind of outsource and say, okay, based on this strategy, what are the tactics I need to do there? Like SEO, content, paid advertising, social media, website conversion optimization, all these kind of marketing tactics. This is where I see a lot of other kind of agencies and this is where everybody gets confused, right? But if I was to talk to you about, well, we just want to increase the average number of monthly cases from 10 to 18 next year. That's our goal for next year. 12 months from now, we'd like to see 8 more cases a month, right? Okay, we get agreement on that, then we can go work on tactics. So that's when you're thinking about your checklist. That's where you want to be, right? So you want to check referrals, define your brand, get your baseline, look at your goals, then you can start thinking about what marketing you want to do, okay? So again, I tend to be a little different than a lot of people come in and say, do these particular marketing things, right? Because there's a lot of things that people focus on that they're selling, but really aren't helping your law firm as a business. All right, wrap that up for us. Now I can go to the other deck. Bear with me one second. Okay, so we talked about all the kind of fun marketing stuff, like the social media reviews, websites, growing your firm, getting more leads, right? Now we get to talk about data security. So that's a nice little shift for you. But again, like the free book thing, so if I asked somebody to pass the forms around, so hopefully it makes it to you, just drop that off. And we don't spam you, so I literally say, if you want a newsletter, that's great. If not, say no, and you'll get the book, and you won't really hear from us. Data security. So again, you know me now. Let's see. I want to come up with a second random fact that I thought was kind of funny. So I've been held at gunpoint. So I lived in downtown Chicago. So in back alley one night, held up at gunpoint. They asked for my wallet. I'm like, okay. And this is I think this is. Cell phones were around, but it was like, the big brick one. So I was out the bars. I didn't carry the big brick cell phone back then, right? But what's funny is It's funny, I got held at gunpoint. What was funny is I had to fly the next day. I was flying a lot for work, just traveling, and I actually remember, like, here's my wallet, but excuse me, I have to fly tomorrow. Can I keep my ID? So, like, you see the power of the TSA when, you get held up at gunpoint, and all I cared about was keeping my ID so I could fly. So, and he did. He grabbed a wallet, pulled it out, and handed me my ID. So, because, credit cards were easy, right? Yeah. So, anyway, fun story. All right, so the problem from running a law practice with data security issues, the problem is that, maybe 10 years ago, but certainly 15 years ago, right, we did not have to worry about protecting our confidential information from malware and hackers and viruses as much. Using the internet for all our discovery and even investigations of, looking at people's like social media profiles and things like that as a part of discovery, right? Managing documents and things in cloud-based services, whether you have that or somebody you're working with, another lawyer that referred stuff to you, it says, well, here's our portal in the cloud, you got to get stuff from this, and or communicating with clients without almost ever seeing them anymore, right? Like the amount of clients that you see maybe once in your office, right? You're emailing, you're talking, you're text messaging. We have people that get a lot of leads and people want to talk to them on their Facebook Messenger profile, which is crazy to me. I guess, I'm not a millennial, right? So, but it's crazy to me, but like people will go to Facebook Messenger, their law firm Facebook page, and go to Messenger and start asking questions about their case. It's crazy, right? But we didn't have to worry about that 10 years ago. Now, in around 2012, kind of because of this, right, the ABA said, well, we're having a problem that, there are lawyers out there who don't have email addresses. Right, and people want to communicate via email, or other technology issues that they just weren't up to date. They're not even able to use like Word, or they're redacting things wrong. Right, so the ABA actually incorporated into the competence language, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. Okay, I think it's 2012 when this was recommended, and I think 20-something. I don't remember the number. I think South Carolina just adopted it last week, but Nebraska adopted it in 2017. So we've got right there, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. So competence now means what's going on with technology, right? So it didn't before. So also, we talk about confidentiality. Right, so client confidentiality when it comes to technology, things like this is legal, right? Specific professional rules of conduct, but you also have confidentiality if you deal with medical information from HIPAA, right? You've got certain financial, if you're doing like estate planning and stuff and deal with a lot of finance, there's like financial specific rules out there and regulations. Then you also have things like sending a Word document that has all the markup of change tracking in it because you didn't PDF it, right? Like people doing that, and like I was saying, like there's all your data you're providing. I've got just story after story of people who. So I didn't mention this. I also worked with iManage, which is if you have a larger firm, they're a document management company that works with law firms. So I was a product manager there for years, and so there was these stories of all these law firms that would have information, and in the comments on their Word documents, they would go back and forth on how they were going to approach the case, right? And then, you have to like provide that all your information and evidence and stuff to the other party, and they would provide the Word document, and these they would turn off those comments, right? I turned them off. The other opposing counsel would just turn the comments back on and see everything, right? So these are kind of like seems like a simple thing. But knowing that you should PDF to get rid of those comments, or there are tools that can scrub that kind of stuff, right? So that's that competence issue. Again, the non-lawyer assistants. So are you hiring people that are opening you up to all these issues as well, right? So here's an example of a non-lawyer assistant problem, and this was in what state are we in? Illinois. That's right. So they had some electronic filing and had worked with somebody. If I get too close, that's going to not work. I will stay here. So they had, so it was an electronic filing system, and the person, because they didn't redact the right information, and they had outsourced a bunch of this electronic filing work, the person had uploaded all these different people and had all their personal identifier information, so security numbered, all the stuff that was not supposed to be there by the rule, and they're like, well, we didn't do it, right? It was their fault. They're like, no, like that's your responsibility to know what people are doing, what they should be doing, and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, this is, it actually is happening, and people are, you know, getting brought up as on, you know, ethics, having to see the ethics board and get sanctioned, or even if it's just reprimands, you know, then it shows up in your AVA profile, back to like protecting your reputation again, right? So this is where I hear it's like, well, I'm not a computer person, right? Tough. So we've had some people, you know, clients who say, well, I don't really know how to get to the website that you're building for me. I don't have a computer on my, you know, my secretary was the word that was used, still, you know, like prints off all my emails, and I do it that way, right? So somebody's at least using the technology, so the technology is involved in the practice, right? So, you know, but if my 85-year-old mother-in-law can like use her machine, you know, now that she lives in a different city, to still access the news from her town, get online and play like bridge with her friends from like the other city, and get on video conference with us like a couple times to see the grandkids, or like we can figure this out, right? Like, so the other issue we're seeing is that, you know, computers have like gone so fast, so quick. So you're carrying a supercomputer right in your pocket. So in 1985, the Cray supercomputer was like the most powerful computer on the planet, right? The iPhone, this isn't even it, right? This is like way past that. The iPhone 4, I think, was more powerful than that, right? A Nintendo 64 has more power than what they used to launch the rocket to land somebody on the moon, right? So like our processing power has increased a lot. And then every day, something that we do is moving online, or has moved online, right? So you've got, I mean, how many people pay their bills online, right? Like, you know, you go online, you pay your bill that way. Like writing checks is just, you know, like, or you get in the grocery store and the person writes the check in front of you, and you're like, really? You know, like we're all, you know, paying stuff online. Shopping, I mean, just look at all the stuff right now, this part of the year, where every data is coming out about online shopping, you know, is increasing by a ton. I went to Target for like a Black Friday deal, and I'm like, I'm never going to get the doorbuster because I showed up at 8 in the morning on Friday and not 8 at night on Thursday. And I learned that they were totally dead overnight. Like, people didn't show up because everybody sat at home and went online. So, depositing checks with phones. Like, anybody use DocuSign? Right? Like, so we use DocuSign, or an e-sign service to do with our clients. Pull my phone up and countersign everything right from, I mean, right? It's awesome. So we can pay with our mobile devices now, right? You can check into hotel rooms with your mobile device. Don't even need a key anymore. You can play the lottery with a mobile device now, I guess. I don't know if that's a good thing. But then you've got, you know, like actual full, you know, industry specific things. This in the real estate industry, .loop, which was, I think, bought by Zillow recently. They just work with real estate agents, and they create the entire process can be managed off of the phone from the real estate agent with the client. So the last house I bought, I signed the contracts in Disney World by the pool, right, on this, because, and this was like years ago. I'm like, what a fascinating software, right? But now we've got it with, I mean, even like my case, which is, I think, the most basic, you know, kind of entry-level practice management system for a solo. I mean, it works well. I'm not saying it's bad. But it's like that easy to use. Like, just, you know, solo can implement my case pretty quickly. They're online, and they've even got a, you know, mobile app to be able to manage a lot of stuff, you know, mobile technology. So, you know, like, you know, are you learning quickly enough to satisfy the guidelines, right? That's where things come down to. So let's see if I can talk about a few of these. So one of the things that, anybody, Robert Ambrogi, you may know him, he's got a great blog on legal technology, so anything about kind of things going on in legal technology, Bob is great at that. So this is actually from 2016. But he said, if you're in technology dark ages, beware, you face not just obsolescence, but also ethical rebuke, talking about ethics and technology issues. So it's not that you're just going to eventually not be able to compete because you're not using technology. There's actually ethical considerations in practicing law because of how instrumental technology is in the practice of law, or has become. Like this is one, an ethics opinion in California in 2015, that they actually have things about if you're doing e-discovery, right? You can't just say, we did e-discovery. You have to actually show that you know what you're doing and doing things correctly, right? If you lack the skills, you have to go hire somebody else to do this, right? This is an ethics opinion, right? These are things that are coming out. This again, 2015. That's 4-ish years ago. North Dakota, like a DVD issue, which it's kind of funny to use that word, video DVD. I haven't put a DVD in a computer in how long? But lawyers and judges increasingly must be vigilant about identifying, knowing precisely what evidence is being admitted. Essentially talking that, in this case, that the judge was not able to determine if something was of evidence or not because it was too new of a technology. And they're saying, well, they produced it, it was the correct thing to do, just because a judge doesn't know it, that's a problem for the justice system, right? So that came out. Delaware, this one's great. I just have to read it because it's so funny. He confessed to the court, I am not computer literate, I have not found presence in the cybernetic revolution. That was the quote. So, but basically, the court said, because they had adopted that comment 8, professed technological incompetence is not an excuse for discovery misconduct. So, and they were, they basically had done something and said, oh, we didn't mean to do that. We wanted to pull something back, and they said, no, you've already given it, and it's your fault. So something that they were needing, to kind of help their case didn't work. All right, so we're going to go on to kind of the confidentiality side of things. Again, this is what the height of confidentiality, protecting your case files and stuff was, right? It was all your file rooms. I mean, how many people have still big file rooms? I was at somebody's office the other day, and there was they were showing me here's our file room, and they were proud that was like a tiny, just a small row of things because they moved everything online, and they were able to actually grow their law firm without having to get more space. It's kind of cool. Good for profitability. But anyway, there was, you had a lock and your case files. You knew where they were. You could, keep people out. If a motion was filed, you knew how to protect it before you had to hand over the documents. Now, granted, this is often what things really look like. I love that there's an ABA badge over here and some Tennessee Bar Association or something. So I found this online, on Google Images or whatever, but that's kind of funny. That was actually a lawyer's desk. But this is, what you see in terms of reality of, where papers are. But now in 2019, here's where we're at, right? We've got email, we've got Wi-Fi issues. People are, handing stuff around on USB sticks that aren't secure, or where are they going, getting lost. You've got your cloud services Dropbox is the one that everybody uses because it's free and easy to start. Probably maybe not the best one to use off the start, but people use it. You've got laptops people are bringing to work and using. You've got phones, bring your own device issues. Is it corporate managing it or not? These are big pains in the butt that's who's not going to use a phone because you say you can't have a phone? That's crazy. But again, we actually have rules that say we have to be careful about this stuff, right? So we have to protect against unauthorized access by third parties. Now, before it was, I made sure the door was locked and we had a security guard or something, right? Now it's unauthorized access by third parties. Nobody even thought somebody breaking into the office, right? Every single person here probably thought, yeah, that's hackers. That's, people, mistakenly putting a security on it, that making it available to everybody, not just the one person who should see it, right? Violation paragraph, that lawyers made reasonable efforts to prevent access or disclosure. So this is your get out of jail free card. I love this quote. right? So it does not constitute a violation if the lawyer has made reasonable effort to prevent the access or disclosure. So it doesn't say that, and whoever came up with this was pretty smart to kind of say, look, you're not going to be perfect, right? Because, especially with hacking, you have to be right every single time. They only have to be right once, right? That's the problem with hacking right now. So, but if you're doing the reasonable things to protect the data, you're in the clear. I mean, you've done their job. Now, what is reasonable? We'll have to get into that in a second, right? But, you know, if additional safeguards are not employed, the cost of employing additional safeguards, difficulty in implementing safeguards, extent to which safeguards adversely affect the lawyer's ability to represent clients. So they're basically saying that there are other needs sometimes to have things. So like HIPAA, right? You may have extra rules because of HIPAA, and that's okay. Or if the client requires you to do things because they're like a defense contractor, you may have extra rules that go above and beyond reasonable. And this is the exact, not the exact, but the general language adopted by Nebraska. So, I mean, this is the model rule. This is Nebraska saying the same thing. This duty, however, does not require lawyers special security measures if the method of communication affords a reasonable expectation of privacy. You know, must act as the safeguards. Oh, here it is. Lawyer must take reasonable precautions. So there, you know, again, get out of jail free card, and that as long as you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, you're okay. Cool, right? What does that mean? Right. So what is reasonable this day and age? So right now, in my opinion, and this isn't something I think you're going to be able to like call me as an expert witness or whatever, but these are the things I think people should care about. Encryption we'll talk about really fast. Email and how it is not secure at all, right? So email, what I call insecurity, just knowing that. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication and why that's important. Public Wi-Fi and what to be careful about and what you can do about it. And then phishing scams and malware stuff we'll talk about. So we'll talk about these in detail, but these are the highlights, I think, that if you are taking care of this, you can argue pretty well that you're taking reasonable precautions. So this is about what I'm going to talk about for encryption, because whether you're a Mac person or a Windows person, they have both made it dead easy to hit pretty much one button and encrypt your whole hard drive. Okay, so for Mac, you've got the file vault, and those links actually take you to the instructions, I think, on Apple's site or something like that. And then Windows, this is the Windows 10 one, but they have something called BitLocker, and the terms may change, but they literally made it where you kind of hit a button and say, encrypt my drive. And then everything on so if somebody was to take your computer, didn't have your password, if they took the hard drive out or were able to get directly to the hard drive, all the data on there is encrypted unless they were able to go through your kind of login. Okay, so like the fact that Apple, kind of encourages that right out of the box when you turn it on, it kind of says you should do this when you first set up your machine, and then you kind of are saying no, I don't want it to be encrypted if you're going to move forward, right? So, and Windows is making it easy too. So, do that, and you covered yourself on encryption on your like local machines. Okay. Email. So the issue with email is, first of all, like if you're running a business, right? So if you have a business, then you should probably be using some level of email provider, like Google Apps. So Office 365 or Google Apps. Some big old law firm might still have some Lotus notes sitting around or whatever, but most people are going to have Google Apps or Office 365. Nice thing about those are outsourced things, right? So Office 365 and Google both offer like more secure, higher level enterprise email management stuff where they handle encryption and these other things where they'll even handle things for, being able to, let's say, track it like this and destroy that. And so you get all your records management stuff if you wanted to go to that level. Most people don't need to. But it's where is the email going is usually your issue, right? So if you have Office 365 and it's encrypted from you to their servers, that's great. Google Apps, same way. If you're using like Google Apps, not just the general gmail.com, if your email is, at your law firm and you're using Google or you're using Outlook, Office 365, like a Windows Exchange server. I have to be clear on this because a lot of times people will get a domain and their domain provider or their friend's nephew in the basement will say, well, here's an email, you just use this. If they're not using like an enterprise grade email server, you're probably not encrypted over the wire. I'll tell you right now. But where's it going? Oftentimes your clients are using like, at hotmail.com, at Gmail, at, whatever, cc.roadrunner.net or, like these different, cable company ones. Those are usually not encrypted. So the stuff you're sending may be encrypted within your own walls, but when it goes to the client side, that email is often not encrypted over the wire. So that it's to be, to recognize, because it drives me crazy when clients send me their credit cards information over email, because it's not a secure tool. Emails are all text. For years they were sent over the wire, plain text. Google and Microsoft and stuff have encrypted that, but it's always been plain text. The other thing to worry about is BCCing clients or CCing clients on things, because people will hit reply all, and then now you get suddenly a whole bunch of information. So what happens is you BCC your client, they hit reply all to reply back to you. So you would basically send some information over to the opposing counsel, you BCC your client, they hit reply all, and this happens enough that there's an ethics opinion about it, and then now all the information went to the opposing counsel. Right? Again, happens enough, there's an ethics opinion about it, so don't BCC clients as a way to kind of keep them informed. Let's create a separate email for them, okay? So is that good on email? Like, just know that email is probably not secure, right? So it's okay. I mean, if you're sending some documents back and forth on it, that's okay. Like if those documents don't have to be crazy secure. But if it's like personally identifiable information, I would be really careful. Best way around that is some portals, right? So a lot of the practice management software that you can NetDocs is a kind of there, and I think they're out of that works with just law firms. So then you can basically send somebody a link to that document. Some of them even have check-in if you're a larger law firm. So those are probably better ways to send documents than just attaching stuff to email. Which, by the way, it's just a general practice. Like, it does get old after a while when you're trying to remember which is the latest attachment and you're going through all your emails and stuff. So using these cloud services like a Dropbox or a Box or NetDocuments or something like that actually makes it easier, because when you go to it, you're working on the latest version, right? Spreadsheets are the worst at that. When people start spreading spreadsheets around and you go in and you work on all this spreadsheet for a while and you realize that like somebody's already updated all this last week and you just grab the old one. All right, so passwords. It's not that funny. All right, this is 2015 and they come out with something all the time. I just haven't updated in a while because it looks pretty much identical. Okay, so there's a company that tracks, so you guys know like people get hacked all the time and hackers release all these passwords. So there's a company that kind of pulls all this data in, and actually if you give them your email address, they'll let you know if your email address has been involved in a hack. It's called I've Been Pwned, P-W-N-E-D. You can actually put your email address in there and they'll email you if your email showed up on one of these lists, which basically means that email and that password probably are available to other people. They did a survey, or they scraped all the data and found out what the most common passwords were, and here's what they were. So I love this one, Batman. But trust no one. They thought they were being really tricky. Trust no one. Somebody thought like, I'm being good. It was 25th most popular password, right? So, let me in is a good one, right? These are crazy. So Superman did beat out Batman, though. That's interesting. But like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, like, come on, really? So, but this is actually how people are getting in these massive failures, right? So Equifax, probably one of the biggest hacks recently where they just gave all, because it actually had personally identifiable information like social security information and financial information and stuff, right? They didn't patch a web server. It's a simple thing that you should, if you have somebody doing that, they should be updating that pretty consistently. And the username to get into that web server, the username was the default one that was set up, which is admin, which you should never use the default of admin, because that's one of the, admin or user or guest, just always change those. But it gets better. The password was admin. Okay, so Equifax, right? So obviously, when this came out and they were able to show this, this is one of the key pieces of evidence that is how they lost class action. So like, was it $700, $800 million? It's actually not even that much for them to pay for what they did. So my recommendations are, this was my recommendation before. I personally use 20 character random generated passwords. We'll talk about how to remember those in a second. In 2012, a 25 GPU cluster, so GPU is like the graphics card in a machine, and so like these hackers were able to kind of take a graphics card, or maybe like a Nintendo, right? They can take the graphics card out, they can like kind of put them together, and again, this is 2012. So 25.1 could crack every Windows password under 8 characters in less than 6 hours. And this is 2012. I thought I had the slide in here. I didn't have it in here when I looked this morning. But I think it's like down to like 20 minutes or something now with the power we have today, right? Because our cell phone is probably more powerful than that. So, but back in 2012, the data was an 8-character password would take less than 6 hours. 15-character password is 41 billion years. This has come down, by the way. It doesn't take that long. But just know that, have long passwords and make them not like, let me in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until you get to 15 either. So random. But here's how you do it, right? There are password management tools out there, and this is just a public service courtesy announcement in addition to the data ethics. These password management will, like, once you get used to them, are the best thing ever. They just make the world so easy. You have LastPass, you have 1Password, there's a bunch of other ones out there. LastPass is the one that we recommend because it works on all the different platforms. If somebody's a Windows person or a Mac person, iPhone or an Android. But you basically create a random generated password and it saves it. It knows it saves it on this website. So when you go to that website next time, it'll say, do you want to pre-populate it? And it'll feed it right into the username and password right away. It's like, okay, well, that's cool, but what about my phone, right? Because that kind of sucks, because if I go, my phone is usually like apps, right? It's not usually like websites. Well, now they all have LastPass and 1Password have things for your phone, where all that information syncs to the stuff on your phone, and you can then just have it in the app password right away as well. Like, you don't have to remember these words. You can create for every site, and you are like totally golden. Because usually what happens is, when somebody hacks a website, they get your username and password, and they go take that username and password and use it across like a whole bunch of other sites to test it out. So Disney just got in trouble. Disney Plus came out because a bunch of people got hacked with their Disney Plus account. They're like, oh my gosh, the security's horrible. Well, it turned out that that's what happened is people were taking their username and passwords that they were stolen from other websites, assuming that most people are lazy and use the exact same password everywhere, because they don't do stuff like this, right? Like, I just finally got my wife to stop, and she works for Amazon Web Services, by the way. So I just got her to like finally use this like a couple months ago. So, but it's awesome. They have enterprise versions, so if you work on client stuff, multiple people need to access the same like kind of login and stuff. You can actually have shared folders across your company and stuff too. So that's very helpful. Not hackable. So the nice thing about it is it's a random generated password. So anything that's over like 15 characters, like we said before, is like really hard for somebody to brute force hack. For now. LastPass website. Yeah. So everything goes from your computer to that website and is stored encrypted. So if somebody hacked into LastPass, all they would see would be a bunch of encrypted things that they couldn't read. So. If we really want to get into the technical details, in about 4 years we'll have quantum computing, and that'll get rid of that issue. So, but for the next 4 years, I think we're safe. Yeah, so it's stored on your computer, encrypted, sent over the wire encrypted, and stored in their servers encrypted. So they did have like a small breach, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and what basically came out is like they couldn't get information other than I think some like marketing data they had, but like because it was encrypted. So. Good question. So the one way to kind of go above that, though, to kind of like get to the big encryption problem, if somebody could hack your password, is this the new thing that you're seeing a lot is multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication basically means something you have plus something you know. Okay. A good way to think about it is like when you put your ATM card into the machine, right? You have the card. So if you put the card in the machine, they could kind of go, okay, well they have the card, so I can just give them the money. But you want one more authentication step, right? So it's like what you know. So it's like you put the card in, and then you put your code in, and the bank's like, okay, like they have something, and they know something that we're going to trust that it's them. Okay. So multi-factor authentication is essentially doing the same thing digitally. So it's basically like you put in your password, and then up on your phone, because a lot of websites are starting to do it, they'll like text you a number, right? So that's the entry-level, lightest weight multi-factor authentication. It's like they'll text you a number and you type in a code, and then you can get in, right? So you put your username and password in, which you knew and it was complex, that's great. But this website still wants you to go the second step and do like a code. LastPass, Microsoft, Google, they all have these like multi-factor authenticators. And then it literally pops up on my phone and I can hit, yep, allow. They do my Face ID or your thumbprint or whatever you use on your phone. And it knows, okay, he typed in the password, he had something, therefore we're going to let it go through. This is a way to, multi-factor is the best way to prevent like the brute force hacking. Because even if you get your password, they say that you're approving. So this is, and you're seeing it more and more and more. I mean, like Facebook has it now, Google has it. You could, to log in, you could do multi-factor, right? The fact that banks are some of the last people to implement this drives me crazy. I think it should be a rule that they need to do it, but not all your banks do it, but a lot of people are doing the multi-factor. And this is a great tool if you see it to take advantage of from a data security. Okay, public Wi-Fi. So you've got, you go to your Starbucks, you go whatever, you got Wi-Fi everywhere. You're on the plane now with GoGo, right? So you've got, it used to be nice because you get quiet time on the plane. Now you can work, all day on the plane. So I think I get more work done on planes these days. Wi-Fi in your hotel room, right? And even when you go log into these public Wi-Fis, I know on Apple, this is an Apple one, Microsoft is the same thing. It even tells you, hey, by the way, it's not secure, right? Like you're being told by your own computer that this is not a secure Wi-Fi. So from a reasonable standard, I think, that this isn't secure. So what do you do about it, right? So again, that's, I think from a phone right there, open networks providing security, so what the reason you need to do this is there's something called man-in-the-middle attacks, and people they call sniffing. Those are the two terms people use in the kind of technical hacking community and stuff. So what they do is someone will pose as the Wi-Fi. So if you ever go to Starbucks and you'll see like Starbucks and Starbucks 2, Starbucks 3, Starbucks Guest 1 or something like that. It's sometimes people who are just kind of like, whether they're parked in front or whatever, they have computers set up that are acting like that. If you're there, all they do is reroute the traffic through Starbucks Wi-Fi, but they take every bit of information you're typing in on your computer. Okay, so that's called man-in-the-middle, and it's not uncommon, by the way. It's like it happens. So the way to protect against that is, well, first of all, if you use secure websites, at least you're sending some stuff over the wire encrypted. They can do some, they call key trackers, where they can track at least what you typed to get passwords. But the best thing to do is using a VPN. So a lot of if you're a larger law firm, your law firm probably maybe have implemented a VPN. You can log into your network using a VPN, and then you can access, you're secure, over the wire. But there's personal VPNs. I personally use NordVPN, NordVPN. It's like a few bucks a month. But what they do is, when you log in to like a public Wi-Fi, then you connect to the VPN. Everything you're sending goes through this VPN in an encrypted format before it goes out to the rest of the internet. So if anybody's trying to listen in the middle, they can't see anything. They just see it encrypted the whole way. So that and it does, there's other benefits to it as well from a security standpoint. But here's some of the ones like CyberGhost, Hotspot Shield, is one. But NordVPN I think is it provides pretty good service for the price. On cell phones? Yep, iPad, cell phone. Yeah. So and actually it's built to work. It's really easy to set up. So it'll walk you right through it. But yeah, I was just at a airport lounge last night when I told you I was laid over for like 6.5 hours, not intentionally. And I was sitting next to some guys that were in the military, part-time, they're National Guards, but one of them was in the cyber hacking unit. So it's kind of cool, we were talking, whatever. And then the guy like joked, he's like, yeah, you know, he's listening to your stuff right now, like just joking around, whatever. I'm like, well, I'm on a VPN. He's like, oh, I guess he's not. So it's kind of cool. So phishing this is actually a disciplinary board hearing, so you're gonna love this one. Phishing is a form of fraud in which the attacker tries to learn by posing, and the biggest security risks you have are the users, not usually your servers and systems and cloud data and stuff. So the phishing one, this one, the client had documented that he had money from a cousin in another country and agreed to a percentage fee of the $18 million. He needed taxes paid to receive the money, and so he convinced some of his clients, the lawyer, convinced some of his clients to loan money to the client to help pay taxes. When he really dove into it, he also pulled a little out of the trust account too, which is a big no-no. So, you know, like, well, that's not very good. Like, why would you do that? You go reach to, I mean, that's a horrible brand play, right? Like, reach out to your clients and say, hey, well, I got a good investment opportunity for you. You know, if I can get this taxes and my cousin's got this extra money and we're going to all make money. All right, you know, sounds a little fishy. Well, here was the email. Right? I mean, it's like from the office of Mr. Suleiman Bello, the African Development Bank, West Africa. I mean, you know, like it's the African Prince email, basically. And so this guy got this email, this lawyer, and then went, clients had to get money out of it. Once he found out that it was fake, was embarrassed, paid the client out of a trust fund. Yeah, it was a mess. So now, like, that's odd. Like, I show it because it's kind of funny, but it happens, right? But it's you know, it's a little silly. But what people are doing now is, see, this is one of the ones. Is it this one? Next one? Yeah, this one. So they're now getting really good. They're calling spear phishing. So they send phishing emails that are just really targeted to a particular industry because these hackers are smart, right? They're paid by, the hackers aren't just a person sitting in a basement, by the way, anymore. I didn't talk about that earlier. They're typically, these are organized crime units, right? Mostly from other countries. We've kind of heard that. So they, you know, tons and tons of money. They hire smart people, you know, like university educated computer programmers and stuff. So what they've done is figured out that, well, lawyers tend to click on things when something comes in across the wire saying they've been brought up on an ethics issue. So if you got something that came into your email and said, ethics issue, click here to understand what's going on, like, you'd be like, oh, yeah, you know, click, right? So they're basically creating, and then they would take you something, well, enter your information to make sure it's you, and then you enter all this detailed information, and then suddenly they have your information, right? Like there was one in, I think, with, who was it? I think it's chiropractors, between chiropractors and lawyers, where they were sending stuff to chiropractors, or it was like the chiropractor was sending stuff saying, hey, I have a case to accident attorneys. It was like, again, it was like they were just posing as the chiropractor, you know, here's the information, would you be interested? And of course everybody's like, oh yeah, refer me an accident client, that's awesome. Clicking and provide, so they were getting all this extra data by getting really smart. So again, that's why like users end up being your biggest issue, not like the secure like servers. But ransomware scam targets lawyers with phony ethics complaints. That's the one where basically they got in there, they got your information, and then I think this one actually, they downloaded something on Windows machines and locked your computer and did ransomware with it. That's what this one was. So yeah, it's like, be careful. Ransomware is scary and it's on the rise. Has anybody had that issue yet? Would anybody admit it if they did? I don't know. But so I had, you know, a friend who just had it happen to him, who runs he's got like a franchise of like a health salon or something like that. One's like massage and stuff, spa, that's the word. And they had a ransomware and like, you know, got into their system because of a password was some simple password, and locked the system down. And basically they had to pay like $1,000 in Bitcoin, like within 48 hours, or they were going to destroy everything. And they paid it because they wanted it. But it didn't unencrypt everything. So they actually end up losing data as well. So it sucks.
I've heard of the ransomware happening to a firm in Nebraska already.
Yeah, I usually one person every few CLEs will say, yep.
And they did not get to keep all their information as well.
So they paid, they unencrypted, and it didn't unencrypt everything. Yeah, that's typically what happens. So here's, coming full circle on the reasonableness thing. What I recommend is, and there's SANS.org is a kind of general industry, not legal industry, but across security stuff. But computer use policy is something you could create that says, here are our practices. So if you're following the practices, but your team isn't, like, oh, we're going to get in trouble. But if you have a policy that says, here's what you should be following, and one person makes a mistake, you're not held for that. You're like, well, they weren't following policy. I will discipline them that way, but, it's not on me. So I think it's a really good idea to have a computer use policy of, we recommend passwords this way. If you deal with particular industries, like if you do a lot of medical stuff, knowing what you need to do for HIPAA. If you're in, like I said, estate planning and have a lot of financial things, there's certain personally identifiable information you want to make sure you're being very clear about, that your team knows, here's our policies. So. All right, how are we doing? Oh, good. So when it comes to general law practice management, I have another one where I just kind of go into all the different technologies, but since this is more focused on the ethics and data security, I do want to still highlight, if you're, especially if you're small to solo, there's some amazing technology out there that can really help increase your processes and make things just easier. And I think at the end of the day, go home a little earlier and a little more profit. But CRM and practice management software, I think there's a new CRM player called Lawmatics that's kind of interesting. But just like having like one source of all your client information and you can actually set up some workflows that when somebody does this, they automatically get this email sent to them. When they get to this point, a contract's automatically sent out for them to sign. And just all that stuff can happen automatically. Clio and other players. Do you guys have, I assume, do you have like deals with some of the practice managements where they get discounts like Rocket Matter or Clio, those kind?
Yeah, scales can tell them it's better. The Nebraska State Bar Association has a preferred partner.
Yeah, so you can take a look there. But they're so easy now. They've made it, they've figured out what are the, 80 to 90% things that lawyers have to deal with every day and just made it, all built in, with time and billing, the billing itself, some of the document management stuff, obviously tracking all the matter. Paperless office, I think, I have this thing on my desk. I love it. I have one at home now because I keep everything paperless now. It's awesome. But the Fujitsu ScanSnap, whatever, is awesome. So I don't make any money saying this, but I love it. So if you just have the thing, it scans right in so fast, and then you can have it actually go straight into like cloud services now too. So good way to start heading to the paperless office. You also have things like practice management, document management, smartphone apps, Word and Excel competence. This one's interesting. Called the KIA test. There was a general counsel of KIA that was kind of getting frustrated with the rising costs of their general counsel or their outsourced legal to the general counsel office, and so he realized that I think he had gone back and forth on a couple Word documents with some partner, and like it was just like things were redacted wrong, just like basic use of things. He created a little like test. They said like I'm able to go through this in an hour to do these tasks on Word and Excel, and he made them have all I want all the partners and all the key associates on this to take this test. And it took them on average 4 hours. So he said, all right, I'm not paying for your incompetence on using Word and Excel. So like just simple things like knowing how to use Word better, like how to redact things, how to turn comments on and off and stuff. I thought it was very fascinating. And he's actually gone on to create a company that sells that kind of test to other people, so I think we could see that coming. I would love to see bar associations like having kind of like something pulled into the competency side of things. I think Dan Lear was working on that. Anyway, so that's kind of interesting. Legal research alternatives. There's a lot more things than just West and Lexis now. You got Fast Case, Case Text. I think Fast Case just made an announcement with Ross, which is a AI research tool that they're connected now, or they're connecting. So you're going to see like, AI building some of your legal research on tools that are like half the price of like West and Lexis. So, and then you got call assistance. That's another one. We were just talking about that offline, that little side benefit. But just for running your office, like outsourcing some of, like the inbound calls, if you don't want to, have the full receptionist worrying about everything, but have somebody who has like a knowledge base and can answer certain questions or route people the right way. Having these outsourced call services are great, especially when you're like, small solo law firm. But it also gives you the added benefit of being able, if they have like 24/7 call center operators on your Google My Business profile, you can put 24/7 instead of 9 to 5. And we've had clients who've been told by prospects that I'm calling you because everybody else on Google said they were closed. And all they did was they called the operator, or I think it was like Ruby or whoever it was, the Ruby receptionist, who acted like, just did an intake, essentially. Didn't give any information, just did an intake, but they were able to get that case. So that's a nice little side benefit, but it also helps, just in terms of routing. Like we use it so that calls aren't coming to people's desks, they're routed, and they give it, all the sales calls you get now, so many like robo dials and stuff, they can like handle all that for you. When I have that, the number one thing people used to ask about is like, cloud computing scary, I don't want to be in the cloud. So I wanted to spend a little time talking about that. So there are a lot of things that I mentioned that are cloud related. So you've got Office 365 and Google Apps. So for a lot of people, their email is cloud. Unless you have a server in your office, probably sitting underneath the coffee machine for a lot of people, right? Not the most secure place usually, but most people are cloud-based. There's Dropbox, Box, DocuSign. Those are all document management stuff. That's all cloud-based. It's a lot of time and billing, like QuickBooks Online, Xero, different time billing software. Then I mentioned a couple practice management software. There's a bunch of them out there. This is not recommending any particular one, just giving some examples. So in 2012, 74% of attorneys reported using some type of hosted computing service. This is before the word cloud was really taken off, right? Hosted computer service. And then 16% of attorneys did not believe cloud computing will replace on-site computing. So majority of people did, right? Felt that, okay, cloud was coming. This is 2012. But I still have to talk about it because I still get usually questions like, is it safe? And I'm worried about it and I don't want to deal with the cloud. And I think the problem is it was really bad branding, right? Whoever came up with the term cloud should be shot. Because everybody has to have these like big things about, is the cloud safe and everything, because that's what people think about when they think of clouds, like nice little fluffy white things that just are open and nebulous and stuff. But this is how people should be thinking about, right? It's like up in the sky, there's all these locked safes that are really hard to get into. Coming from IBM and having worked in data center worlds and stuff in the past, let me tell you kind of how hard it is, and how secure their stuff is versus like the server in your office under the coffee machine. This is a typical data center, like kind of security side of things. So they typically have some kind of, it's hard to get into, whether it's like fencing or something. They'll have their traffic barricades with a guarded staff. Only one place for customers and people to come in and out of. There's usually badged entry, 24/7 guarded staff. So again, people carrying guns, right? They have, it's hard to see this because I don't know, let me get better graphic, whatever. That word says man traps with biometric tracking. The word is man trap, okay? And I'm going to show you a picture of what that looks like. And then modular data centers where typically, even once you get into the data center, you're taken usually by a guard to your section of the data center, okay? So this is what a man trap looks like. So typically you walk into this thing, it's either one of two, either something like this where you walk into this tube, it closes before the other side opens. You have to like badge in or do a biometric fingerprint or whatever. The other one I've seen is like you'll come in, the door closed behind you, down the end of the hall is a like thumbprint or some kind of biometric. And along that hallway are these like holes in the wall, like these slits where you're like, what are those for? It's like, oh, that's so they can shoot me if I was not supposed to be here. So these things are pretty secure, right? This is, like a data center right there, right? So that's another example where they went through there, but before they go into the data center, they have to go through a hallway, right? And then this is their servers at a data center. There's not cables running everywhere. Like just in setting up today, we made a mess, right? But this is, how many cables they have, but how clean that is, and how nice the servers are run with vented air conditioning. This is a raised floor with vented air conditioning. Multiple internet access points, so they can have different. If one internet goes down, they have other access. So, multiple power on usually staying on at least 2 to 3 power grids. You'll often see data centers near hospitals, or near, because it's like, oh look, we can because hospitals tend to be on 2 to 3 power grids as well. So data centers. Power grids, they often have big kerosene backup generator type of things, and so pretty safe. So anybody question about security of the cloud? I mean, it's the people aren't getting your data that way, brute force, right? But I think this is where some of the things to watch out for, though, are how does the provider handle storage and security of the data? Consult someone with competence in online computer security. Ensure provider has enforced obligation to preserve confidentiality and security and will provide notice if served with process. I think this is one of the most important ones, right? So the question I often get, is if somebody came to you and served you with a motion to get information, you would go fight every step you could to before you had to release that information, right? You know all the due process to follow before you release the case file that's in a and on whatever. If somebody goes to Dropbox with a motion, do you have the contracts in place that they aren't going to give that up, right? And like Box.com, the more enterprise scale ones have these legal specific, legal industry specific contracts where it says, we understand that this is an issue and we will not give the data up on subpoenas, without going through you and that kind of stuff. So. Pretty much all the practice management softwares have that in their language, all the cloud-based practice management softwares that are focused on legal. But Box.com, I know, has a legal side of things. Amazon Web Services has a whole section for work in the legal industry. So they understand, a lot of them understand this. I do not know if Dropbox does. I haven't seen it yet. If somebody has seen it recently. A couple years ago, they didn't. But that'd be one that, if somebody went to Dropbox with a subpoena, are they just going to be like, okay, here you go? What is the data retention? How do you control data retention upon, client leaving and needing their stuff destroyed? So my issue on that is, can you really negotiate with the providers? When did we start? I want to make sure we're not. 5 minutes. Okay. Can you negotiate with them? I recommend making sure that you update your contracts. So if you're going to use a cloud data provider, in addition to having your data security policies, update your contracts to kind of say, we use these things and here's what we do, so that if somebody has an issue with that, they can let you know. Or if maybe there's an extra security, like I said, if you're working with a defense contractor or something in the medical, if they have extra rules, they can let you know that we need to make sure that these are covered. And again, your easy out is get cyber liability insurance. It's not crazy expensive, and it'll help pay your costs if something goes crazy wrong to do it. I mean, I think I'm paying a few grand a year for it. All we do is work online, right? So I make sure we have that. There are no specific rules, professional conduct to address requirements lawyers to retain a physical copy of file instead of electronic copy. So this is actually an ethics opinion that was from 2017 right here in Nebraska. So Nebraska's we're cool, you can have electronic stuff, we're good with it. So that's our data security stuff, that's cloud, that's security, passwords, yeah, we covered everything. Any questions? I'm happy to talk about marketing stuff too, it's more fun. Awesome.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you guys.